Hey there, how you doing? Welcome to the channel. So today I wanted to do a little, I wanted to do a little talk about inflation and inflation expectations. And what's been happening out there is we've seen on the government reported data that there's been an increase in inflation, and we've had this, so there's this big debate going on. Is this inflation transitory, or is it more permanent? And so, of course, this is going back and forth, and there's a lot of things going on with this. But what I wanted to do is kind of try to look at it myself, because I had sort of a feeling about it, and I wanted to look at it myself and see what is going on. So that's what I'm going to do today. Okay, so what I want to do is we can go to the government website, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to this St. Louis Fed here, and they have this graph of consumer price index for all urban consumers, all items, U.S. city average. So you have this nice chart, and you can see certain things. We can look all the way back here. This goes back into the 50s, and you can see low inflation. Now, what this is the number. So this is a price index. So you see here, like, on this date, it's 26.5, and then a later date, it's 27. So when you go to look at it, like you look at the year-over-year change, you compare the current number of 27 or 26, compare it to what it was a year earlier, and that's either an increase or a decrease. And this is monthly data. It is seasonally adjusted, so that's something to keep in mind as well. Okay, so what we can see is generally that this is going up, the price of this basket of goods that they're looking at is going up consistently over time. But we do have these little dips of what you call deflation, right? So normally the state is that the price of things are going up. So inflation, the price of things going up is inflation. Deflation is the price of things going down. So you see these little dips, right, every so often, but they're pretty rare. Now, we go back here, and we go back to the big thing that happened last year with the virus, and I'll just call it the cerveza sickness so I don't get in trouble from YouTube. But so what happened at that time back in February and into March is we see that the prices actually dipped significantly. So we had this dip, right? And this was due to the shutdown of the economy and all the things going on. And so this dip here that is the reason that the Fed and all the people on the Fed side of things are like, hey, the inflation that we're seeing now, here we are about a year later, and we're seeing inflation. Well, what they're saying that it's a base effect. In other words, because we take the number that we get like this month, next month, the previous month, and we compare it from a year ago where it had dropped, therefore it's going to artificially look high because of the deflation that we had. So they're calling this like base effect. And they're saying that, hey, this high inflation is transitory. Once we're through this dip, in the next few months, once we're through this dip, then the inflation is going to go down. The reported inflation numbers are going to go down. Now, of course, that's true. But the question is all the inflation that we're seeing now, is it really due just to this dip, or is it due to something else? So what we're able to do here is we're actually able to download the data. So what I did is I said, hey, download, and I got Excel data. Okay, so let's go to the Excel sheet that I created with the data that I downloaded from these guys. So one of the things that I would say is, the government, they are providing this data. So that's good, and people should use it. If you're sitting out there and, there's always people debating inflation, blah, 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 is it permanent? Like, this is not the entire story. The economy is a very complicated thing, but the point is we have some data, and we can try to understand the data, right? And so it's really good that they provide it for us. So what we have here in the downloaded file, I have the raw data here. So in this tab, I'm just the raw data. They're telling you the observations, the headers and everything. So all I do is I copy the data to a spreadsheet to make simple headers. And I have basically, here's the date. So it's on a monthly, and here's actually the number. So now I have the number, and I can plot the number. And then what I did, see, and I'm gonna go to this chart right away. See, because if I look, the blue line here is this dip. And my point is like, okay, I can do an analysis where I interpolate, where I say, hey, look, assume this didn't happen. What's happening with inflation now, a year later, if I assume that this dip didn't happen? In other words, if all the inflation that we're seeing now in the CPI is due to this base effect, this artificial dip that happened because the economy was shut down, then if I remove that dip using standard scientific procedures of interpolation, then which means I just draw a straight line, assume that that this never happened, that it just continued on the trend that's approximately been on the whole time, right? It's always been this whatever increasing at different slopes, whatever, forever. Just assume that was continuing. Then I should be able to analyze and try to figure out, how much of it is really due to the base effect and how much of it isn't. So this is what I did. So I go to the data, I leave the initial data I don't touch. And then over here, I say edited. What I did is I tried to find a point before. So I went back to February before all this started happening. And then I go to August where like the deflationary effect had pretty much worn out. So basically you have this dip and I want to say, draw a line through it. So what I can do is I can interpolate. I can use the interpolation equation and that's on the web. And I'll just show you that really quick, just so you can see it. And so yeah, so you can just look up interpolation. Here I am at this data digitization site, whatever, on the web. And here you go. Here you can interpolate. Now this formula, like if it's really easy, if it's just one point in the middle, you can just take, the y2 minus y1 divided by 2, blah, and then add that to the y1 if it's just in the middle. But this allows you to interpolate multiple points, which is what I had to do here. I had to interpolate 5 points. So basically you can calculate using this equation here for however many points you want to put in there. And so that's what I did. So this is how we can do this. Now, what do we get? What is the result of that? Okay, so now we're gonna go back to my spreadsheet. Okay, so here I marked what I did in interpolation, and then what I did as well is I took and said, okay, using that, this is the reported year over year, unedited data, and then here's the edited year over year. These are the inflation rates. So let's go check out the charts that we get. Okay, so here we go. In the red line is the edited chart. So you can see that they're identical. I only edited these points here. And what I did is you can see it's basically a straight line. In the red, I just filled that straight line. I just took the begin end point and created a straight line to assume that, hey, this little dip didn't happen. So now when we do that, we can compare the results, right? We can compare with the dip and without the dip to see what's going on with the inflation. Now, what I will say right here is people that are saying that, oh, it's all the base effect. Honestly, if I look at that chart, that sounds like a con job to me, because look at the acceleration on that chart. If I go back here, I don't see an acceleration like that. I mean, it's possible that this is a little bit because I need more points and the points might come down and it may be, but this is like serious acceleration in the price data here. I mean, look at it. Just look at this chart for the last couple of years, and then we could look at the chart going back to the 50s. And I'm not sure if you're going to see that kind of acceleration, that increase in the prices. I mean, looking at that, I can look at it and tell you like, hey, that's not base effect. Okay, that's more than just base effect. Okay, so let's look at it. So now we just do the year over year. So now what I've done is this, basically take the current price. So yeah, look at the data. So year over year, what do? Notice how I have a year of data missing, right? Because I go and all I do is I say, hey, what is the current value? Current value minus the previous value from a year ago, turn it to a percent of the previous value, right? That's how you do it. And you get a percentage. So, so the inflation reported here is 2%. So what kind of numbers are we getting? So now we're getting numbers that are like very high. So what I want to do is I will just take a second here, freeze the top row. And what we have here, you can see the inflation is skyrocketed. So here's the unedited data here. You have going up 1.4. We had this modest inflation. All of a sudden it pops up to 2.6 and 4.2. Now the Fed and everyone else will have you believe that, hey, this is base effect because of this dip from a year earlier, right? Well, if I look at the edited chart, hello, not really. Like if that dip didn't occur, we're looking at 3% inflation. Now, granted, I give you that it's lower, it's 1.2% lower, right? when you remove the dip. But what that tells you is that only of the 4.2%, only 1% of it is due to base effect. The other 3% is just due to the other things that are going on in the economy, the other things that the Fed is doing. So that's important to understand. They're telling you it's base effect. It's all due to that dip from a year ago. And I'm telling you that it's not. The data shows that it is not. It shows that only 25% of the total inflation, like 1% out of 4%, only that 25% of it was due to base effect, right? The rest of it is due to whatever's going on. The printing money, the stimulus checks, all that stuff is causing inflation. That's what it must mean, right? So this was, something that I had thought about, and I'm like, I need to really look at this and kind of see. And so basically you can see it here. You have periods of inflation and deflation. We can see here in the blue is, basically the unedited. So we've seen like the last report was 4.2% inflation, and they're like, it's going to be transitory. But not so much, because if I removed the base effect, which is what I did, well, we still had 3% inflation. Sure, 3% is not as bad as 4%, but it's still pretty high. And what's more important really is the hockey stick or the steepness of this curve. If we go back to our data here, you can see, like I'm saying, it's really steep. That's a really steep curve. So in conclusion, what does this mean? The data shows, and with this standard interpolation techniques that is used everywhere in science, this is what we do. We take it as, you take it with a grain of salt, because, hey, I'm making up the numbers, right? And that's kind of what I'm doing, but I'm using a scientific method to do it. But if you take that out, the conclusion is that most of the inflation that we're seeing now and that's being reported is not due to base effect. Once again, it's not due to base effect. It's due to the other things that are going on. Okay. Now, I don't know what that is. Everyone says it's money printing. Well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Maybe it's the stimmy checks, the benefits that people are getting, all these other things. And maybe it will be transitory, because maybe the stimmy checks are going to go away. I don't know. Maybe extra unemployment benefits, all this other stuff that has caused people's incomes to grow, maybe that's going to go away. So maybe this is going to drop off rapidly on the other side. It's possible. But what this shows is that the inflation that we have now is not due to the base effect. So I think that's it for this one. Talk to you later.